and welcome to another episode of the Tell Nut Show. As always, we are your hosts. We have the fabulous and amazing Kirsha Fox. She is the author of The Son of Deception and The White Leaf Child. She's a homeschooling mom of four, avid reader, and gamer.
And my co-host is Julia J.K. Allen, editor, author, and author coach. She's a fantasy and horror author who loves to put magic in everything. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, and we're very excited to welcome our guest tonight. Why don't you tell us all about it?
Yes, Rynn Ely is pursuing her lifelong dreams, and she introduced her debut novel, Memories of Yesterday, in August just last year. When not writing, Rynn can be found cuddled up with her partner, 2 dogs, 2 cats, or traversing the globes in search of new adventures. We're so excited to have her. Welcome.
Yes, welcome to the show.
Thank you
Sorry.
for having me.
Yes, we're very excited. So tell us a little bit about your writing journey. What does it look like for you, and what got you started as a writer?
I have always wanted to write. It's been something that I've been very passionate about since a young age. I found the love of writing in school and have been wanting to be an author for a long time now. So I finally took the leap and finished a manuscript and published it.
And what genres do you write, and why do you choose those genres?
Yeah, right now I wrote romance, which is this book right here, Memories of Yesterday. And then I've actually started branching out to mystery thriller. And I branched out to that because that's my favorite genre to read. It really drives my passion and motivation. So I want to be a part of that journey.
Yeah, no, I love that answer that you're so passionate about consuming that genre that you want to join it and add to it. I love that.
Was there any point in your young life that you're yes, this is what I want to do? Or was there a certain teacher that helped inspire that love within you, or were you just a reader? I don't want to say just a reader. Were you a reader and you just really became hooked?
Right.
Yeah. Actually, it was in kindergarten. I had to do a creative writing piece where you write a story, a short story. And I don't remember much about what the story was. I remember that my main character was this pink dog named Luna.
Yeah.
But that creativeness and that story was something that I loved a lot. I reused that story one other time in elementary school and another creative writing piece. But I remember creating that story was what really got me inspired to love writing and telling stories.
Yes, no, that vent to creativity and just the imagination involved is really addicting.
Yes.
So, what does your writing process look like? How do you go from idea to finished manuscript?
Honestly, I probably go through a lot of ideas. I have a lot of ideas. It's whether or not they make it on paper. I think that's the hardest part for me. Writing it out, I write a lot at night. I spend late nights up until 4 or 5 a.m. writing something and hoping that I like it later on when I'm more awake to read it.
Right.
Yeah, that's kind of how my writing process goes. Is I come up with an idea, I write out a few chapters, see if it sticks, and if it does, then great, and I finish that story. If it doesn't, I know when to move on. So.
And what would you say teaches you when to move on?
The writer's block. If I get severe writer's block, but I still have this feeling that I want to write, that I know that the story is not for me and that it's causing its own block. So that's when I shelve it and I bring out the next inspiration.
Sure. And where do you get all your ideas from? Because you said you have so many ideas. What kind of inspires you?
A lot of personal things inspire me. So my published book was loosely based off of my first love story. Very loosely, but very loosely based off of it. So that gave me my first idea. The second one, the one that I'm working on now, I got it from certain personal experiences that I had, and just obviously a lot of creativity goes into it. But I find one topic that I kind of want to brush over, or one event in my life that I want to recreate, and then I build a world around it.
Oh, that sounds fascinating. Yeah. I love that phrase, build a world around it. Yeah.
Thank you.
That
Yeah.
sounds good. I completely agree with you on the writer's block, by the way.
Right.
It's when
Right.
I get stuck that I know that somewhere I've taken a wrong turn and I
Mhm.
need to go back and kind of analyze where it starts to feel weird and try again.
Right.
Yeah,
Just,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of times you can be trying to force the story in a certain direction or a character to do something that just is not working. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like writer's block just tells you that something doesn't fit.
Yeah.
And if I can't figure out where in the script to drive it and continue going, then I
Mm.
know that it's me and that story are not fitting. So,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
All right. So, what would you say is the most important part of writing?
Oh man, I don't even know. I would have to say probably the creativity aspect, I mean, having having to create everything that you write it's wild. It's so
Mhm.
intense. But obviously it's what makes the story. And I don't know, I love coming up with the creativity and the plotting that goes into it. I
Yeah.
really enjoy that. So,
Yeah. I think a lot of people enjoy kind of the imagination of figuring out the story and unfolding in your head to then tell the story.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, I guess like the plotting is like it's
Yeah.
yeah, it's my favorite part of the whole process. Like I wish that it would just write itself
Right.
and
Oh
then
my
I
gosh,
could just
right.
come up with all the ideas and it does itself.
Yes. No, I know exactly what you mean.
Yes.
So since plotting and the ideas generating is kind of your favorite part of writing, what is your least favorite part of writing?
Oh, the writing itself, honestly.
Right.
I
Right.
I love writing. It's my hobby, and
Yes.
I say that it's also the worst part because, you sit there and I can plot from beginning to end in so much
Mm.
detail, and then after I sit there and look at my pages of notes, I then have to write more pages that expands
Right.
those notes.
Yes. No, I know exactly what you mean. I think a lot of writers are their favorite part, or they love the feeling of having written
Yes,
rather than the feeling of writing because it can be kind of
exactly. Yeah.
agonizing. You're sitting there over all the details and the picking the right word and the right turn of phrase, the
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
description. It's a
Yep.
lot of brain power that you're using. So I think that yes, having written
Mm-hmm.
is such a great feeling. You feel so accomplished and happy and fulfilled. But during the writing process, it might be a little agonizing.
Oh,
Oh,
absolutely.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Trying to find the flow of words and
Yes.
making it then flow with the next sentence and the next paragraph. And the paragraph before is just, it's a lot. So,
It
Yes.
is. It's a lot to juggle and keep in your head too.
Mhm.
yeah.
Yes, I'm
Yeah.
yes, constantly going, okay, I need to have that detail planted somewhere around here. Did I
Right.
remember like how much detail to put in?
Yeah.
And then yeah, I'll be like talking to my husband. I'm like, oh, this thing isn't working. There's a plot hole,
Mm.
like, oh, I need this, but why would they do that if they could just do this instead? Because it's like magic and like I'm trying to make it all
Mm.
make sense. And
Mhm.
you're just ripping your hair out trying to make this thing work. And is this
Right.
garbage? And my husband will be like, "Why do you do this?" I'm like, "It's my favorite thing."
In the world is my
Yeah.
favorite, but I hate it.
Yes,
Yes.
but it is
No,
definitely
yeah.
a labor of love, and it is
Yeah.
a hard labor.
It is. It is definitely my favorite thing. I love writing, I love reading,
Right.
but that
Right.
worst part is just the in between where you're writing.
Mhm,
Yeah. No,
mhm.
I know exactly what you mean. It's like we love it and it's worth the effort, but it is a lot of effort. Mhm.
Yes.
Mhm,
And it feels so great when you're done and you've accomplished something amazing.
Yes. Oh my God.
mhm.
I love feeling productive anyways, but with writing in particular, I feel that like, yeah, it's euphoric.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, do you start with characters or do you start with plot? Like, what do your stories more revolve around?
I think characters. I used to
Mm.
think it was plot. When I was younger, it used to be plot and then I'd make the characters. But more recently, I find the names first. I
Yeah.
I have like a list of names I want to use, and then I build the plot around it. And so there are also like there's a couple upcoming plots that I have that are plot first and I don't have the characters' names.
Mm-hmm.
But the past 2 stories that I've written have been character name first and then plot around it. So
Yeah. No, I find that characters are my favorite part, both as a writer and a reader. Characters are what your reader is going to fall in love with. So I really like to get to know my characters, and understanding my characters helps me to kind of figure out the plot too.
yeah, absolutely. It
Yeah.
shows you like what they're gonna do, what type of
Right.
person they
What
are.
type of decisions they'll make and stuff
Yeah.
when faced with the conflict. Yeah, and the obstacles. Um, do you think it's different when you're reading than when you're writing? Like, do you think you care more about plot stories or character stories?
Yeah, I've noticed that it is completely different of reading versus writing. I
Yeah.
notice a lot more like what I read is definitely not what I write. Obviously, they're
Mm,
the same genre, of course. I
right.
read a
Right.
lot of murder mystery and thriller, but
Mm-hmm.
the characters that I read are vastly different than the ones that I write, and so is the writing style. I
Mm,
read a lot of um it's almost like basic writing. Like the
right.
sentence structures are very simple.
Like Hemingway. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're
Okay.
very simple, but whereas the way that I flow my sentences, the flow of my sentences and structure are very different than what I read. And
Mm-hmm.
so they are vastly different. And I noticed that like these stories that I read are more plot driven than the
Okay.
ones that I
Yeah.
write. But I do try to still match what I read a little
Right.
bit because I think that what I read is such a masterpiece. So I want my writing to
Yeah.
be like it, but I definitely have
Right.
noticed that there's a lot of difference there.
I like that.
Yeah.
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 It
No, I.
feels like you're a very growth oriented person.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to think so.
No, that's amazing. Yeah, no, that's great. I find that a lot of authors kind of are different in their reading taste versus how they write. So I just love to ask questions like that because I find it very interesting to think about.
Yeah, and I mean, I read a lot of thriller, and my only published work right now is a romance, and I don't
Right,
read a
right.
ton of romances anymore. So it is very vastly different in that sense too.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, I think it's so interesting too because it's like yes, like you can have the kind of simple like Hemingway style writing or you can have like more varied sentence structures, more complex sentence structures and stuff. Your style and your voice is your own, and I love that you kind of have developed your own style, but you're still adapting it to the genre to make it genre appropriate.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm trying to definitely change up how my writing is
Mm.
like flowing lately to match the genre, but it definitely I've noticed like a difference that I'm trying to bridge that gap, but yeah.
Right, right. I think yeah, I think that make sure you're still loving the flow. Because if you're not loving the flow, your readers will pick up on like the flow not being smooth,
Yeah.
right? But I think that what you're doing is great. So since you have the growth mindset, what have you learned from the writing process?
Oh, I've learned a lot, honestly. From the start of my book, I've learned a lot of my strengths and weaknesses. I
Mm,
started writing the book that I have published back in early 2022, so about this time in 2 years ago,
mm-hmm.
and I've learned what does and doesn't work for me. So that includes like how I structure my sentences. It
Right.
includes what I'm not good at like certain genres or certain tropes that I don't like or
Mm,
don't tell well. So I've learned a lot of
right.
my my shortcomings or things that I could work on. From the time that I started, I was awful at writing first person.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas more recently, this more recent work in progress, I started doing it in first person, and I really like how that first person is now coming out. But if I'd done it two
Right.
years ago, it was awful. So
No, I can relate because I really I like third person is kind of like my sweet spot where I'm most comfortable. I'm in my comfort zone. But yes, first person it can be tricky, right? Because if you don't write it well or you don't have like a great character, it can come off as very like annoying or grating, and it can be hard to make it like someone you can fall in love with, especially if you don't have the confidence in it. So I love that you practiced it and developed that skill and are now using it in your new book, because I can really relate to that struggle of like feeling like I can't write first person, like because when I would try initially in the beginning to write first person, it would just be like whiny characters, or you know what I mean. It just wasn't working as well for me as third person. So I love that you worked on that skill, right, and
Yeah.
developed it. Yeah. I think that it's great when we know our shortcomings, because then we can like in editing kind of shore up the weak points in the walls, right? And so like, but it all starts with that self-awareness of being like aware of like, hey, I'm great at dialogue, but it's all a wall of text, right? Like it's a wall of words, there's nothing going on. And so like knowing you need to work on that in the editing process is really, really helpful.
Yeah, and dialogue was one of the things that I actually made massive strides in as well. I would
Yeah.
do very bland dialogue. Like, as my beta readers would tell me back in the day, they were like, add something more. Like, they just
Right.
sound like they're just standing around and talking. Like, this is like a
Yeah.
news forecast. Like, make it a conversation. Don't make it sound so scripted. So
Right.
there's a lot. I would say, like, admittedly, I don't think I was a great writer 2 years ago, and I think that going through the editing and the beta reading and taking all that criticism and everything
Yeah.
and growing as an author has definitely changed how I write, and I'm very happy with how I write lately. I think obviously my
Yay.
writing still needs work. Every author's first draft is never great, but
Right.
I definitely think that I've learned and grown a lot over these last 2 years of writing, just like
Yeah.
these 2 years alone of writing. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love that, because like I studied creative writing in college, but I think the most valuable part of studying creative writing in college, because you definitely don't need to be a writer, was getting that feedback in workshops and with like your peers and your teacher, and then being able to incorporate that feedback into making your writing stronger. Because if we're writing in a vacuum, we don't know what we're not doing well, right? So getting that feedback, whether it's beta readers or writing groups, something like that, is so helpful in your growth as a writer.
Yes,
Mhm.
absolutely.
Yeah, no, I love that.
The editors and the beta readers have been my far greatest teachers. They've taught me so much more than I
Right.
felt most of my school teachers did.
Yes.
Just with their comments and corrections. Just, uh, but yeah, and that feedback is so affirming, because
Mm-hmm.
it makes you wonder, like, oh, well, maybe I'm not so bad at this.
Right, right. When you get the feedback of what, like, it's so important when we're critiquing people's work to also say what's working, right? Because you don't want them to lose that in trying to correct what's not working. But like when you find out what you do well and you are affirmed that way, like it's so helpful to know like, okay, I'm good at this. This is working in the story, as well as knowing like what you can improve.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I learned through this experience that I'm actually really great at taking criticism. I didn't think I would
Yeah.
be. I really thought that
Right.
I'd get my feelings way more hurt than they were. Um, but I
Hmm.
did learn through the experience that I actually really appreciate, because I found some
Yeah.
amazing editors and beta readers, I guess editor and beta readers
Hmm.
that really know how to deliver appropriate feedback
Mhm.
Yes.
and not like make me give up on myself. And I really
Right.
appreciate them for
Right.
that.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
I totally agree. Because the last thing you want is to be in a room of people going, "You're so great. It's perfect. Don't change a thing." Like you'll
Hmm.
be, you want support, but that's not what you want. You want people who are going to give you the honest truth and
Right.
help you improve and
Yes,
help this become the best book it can be.
Without
Mhm.
tearing you down in the process.
Yeah, without
exactly.
tearing you
Yeah.
down. It
Yeah.
should
Yeah.
be like honest, but it doesn't have to be brutal.
Yeah, I always tell people
Right.
that are looking to beta read my book that I love a good sandwich compliment, like,
Right.
it's
Yes.
great. I
Positive
could use this,
critique.
but it's
Yes.
great.
Mhm.
Right. No. I love that. And I think it's important to like when we work with beta readers or editors, like letting them know like this is the way I best receive feedback, or letting them know what kind of feedback you're looking for is really, really helpful as well. So
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
great. Letting them know like compliment sandwich me, guys. Like
Yeah.
that is fantastic. Um, this is one of my favorite questions to ask, so I'm going to jump in and ask, who is your favorite author, and what do you think they do really
Right now, well, honestly, so my book is based like the writing style. I really loved The Great Gatsby, and right now I really like more of the classic authors.
well? Hmm.
So like Agatha Christie is also one of my favorites. I think that she's like the queen of like
Yes,
crime
and
novels.
mystery. Yeah,
Yep,
yeah.
yep, and I love her. I love her writing. I love the twists and just like I love that. Right now, though, my favorite author is Stacey Willingham. I believe I'm saying that right. She did All the Dangerous Things and A Flicker in the Dark,
Okay.
and I absolutely love the twist that she has there. She blew me away. She gave me like a moment that I just had to like stop reading just so I can hold my jaw open for like
Hmm.
a solid minute
Hmm.
because her writing, the way that she told the story, it blew me away. So I think
Yeah.
right now of current day, she is one of my favorite authors just because of the ability of storytelling and the shock factor that she has in her
Mhm.
writing.
Right. I love when there's like a good twist. And if you're surprised by things, that's a great feeling.
Yeah.
As long as it's not like shock for shock factor, like shock value
Yes.
only. Yeah. Because there was a really popular TV show that I had to stop watching in like the middle of it because I felt like they were like departing from just being surprising to like what's the worst thing we could do to this character and have you guys watch it, like, but I love a good surprise.
Yeah.
Mhm.
No,
Yeah.
her book, All the Dangerous Things, it
Okay.
made like top of my list this year.
Yeah.
But only in April, but it made top of my list, and
Mm.
it blew my socks off because not only did she everything that she did in the story, every single detail had a place, had a purpose,
Yeah.
and I don't like it was just amazing in that sense, and I like that it was so well thought out and well plotted to the point that every
Mm-hmm.
single detail had a purpose and like an intent to be there. So
Right.
that's like
That's
what I
impressive.
strive to do as an author is have
Yeah.
everything that I write have an intent. So,
Yeah, no, I like to do that too. When I sit down to write, I set a goal for myself as the author, whether it's like developing a relationship between two characters or, inserting something into the plot so that I can use it later. But that's been so helpful for me to not get writer's block, to not get stuck, to know like this is what I want to do in this chapter.
yeah,
I found that very
absolutely.
helpful. Yeah.
Yes, I love a twisty plot. The last
Hmm.
thing I really want is a book to be predictable because once it's
Right.
predictable, it becomes sort of boring for me. I
Mm-hmm.
definitely like tried to incorporate a lot of twisty plots into my own books. I really want to
Yeah.
surprise people. I really want them to gasp and oh no, I didn't see that coming.
Right. But then it
And
makes sense when you look back and see all the clues that's
yes,
been
you
planted.
see
Yeah.
all the way it was set up and how you were misled.
Yes.
And it's the best thing when you have to physically like put the book down from him just to like scream
Process. Yeah.
and process what did I just read, and then you pick
Right.
it up again, and yeah, it's the best feeling.
Yeah, I read crime, mystery, thriller novels for that
Yeah.
ending twist. Like that is what
Mhm.
really
Right.
drives my motivation to finish a crime book is like I want to know who did it. That is my
Yes.
favorite thing ever. I want to know the full story, the full motivation. So when it's
Yes. Yeah.
predictable, it's not great. But when everything fits together in this beautiful masterpiece, it's my
Mhm.
favorite thing. It makes the book whole. So
It's so satisfying for sure.
Mhm.
Hmm.
So if you could tell a new author one thing, what would you tell them?
Oh, I'm gonna tell them what a lot of people tell them is just to write. You know, fix the rest, fix the errors in the second draft. Just write and write until you have nothing left. You know, pour it out on paper
Hmm.
and then deal with everything afterwards. Because I made that mistake of going back and
Yeah.
fixing things, and I mean, it was dreadful. I don't know how many times I looked over a manuscript while still writing it, and
Yeah.
I got halfway through my book and scraped every single piece and decided to make it third person. And it
Okay.
was
Yeah.
wild and it was a lot. And I mean, I'm happy. I am very happy with my outcome, but I did a
Mhm.
lot of things that I wish I didn't do. And that was, I wish
Right.
I just bled onto the piece of paper and then put it aside until I was done. So,
No, that makes a lot of sense because, like, good writing. I think a lot of people don't realize, but good writing is rewriting, right? Like the first draft is just like you figuring out the story, you telling it to yourself to then smooth over and like tell other people the story. So, I love the quote that I'm just shoveling sand into a box to build sandcastles later. That's like somebody described drafting that way. Um, because you can get caught up if you're trying to make chapter one perfect before you move on, you may never move on. Or you may give
exactly.
up because you get so frustrated with like and a lot of times like you figure out the beginning, like the perfect first chapter after you finish the whole novel, then you'll know where to start anyways. So yeah, try not to get hung up on everything has to be perfect before I can move on, right? That's great
Exactly. And
advice.
I fall short of that still to this day, but I'm trying
Right.
so hard to just put it aside. Like the writing sprints are so helpful that
Yes, I love writing scripts.
yes, I love them. They're helpful because it forces you on a time limit to write and you can't go back
Right.
and edit it. You just pour things out and
And then move forward.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And like you don't worry about like the first sentence. Like I know the first sentence is supposed to be the most important thing of a book, but
Mm,
don't worry about it till afterwards. Like all those minor
right.
details, just deal with it afterwards. So
Mhm.
Yeah, no, I love that advice to people.
Yes.
And writing sprints are so helpful because it kind of prevents you from overthinking. That's
Mhm.
why I find them so helpful. Is like one, it prevents you from overthinking because you're just trying to write as fast as you can, and then two, it actually gets me to sit down and write because I know someone's going to hold me accountable when that sprint is up and say, how many words did you do, or did you stare at your phone for the whole time, right? Like so,
exactly.
yeah, sprints are so useful. It's how I got most of my novels written.
I
Hmm.
love that. I admit that it's how I got a lot of my novel written too.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that. When you know how you work well, like you said, that was one big thing you learned about writing your first novels, what works and what doesn't work for you. So like
Mhm.
use that, like hack yourself, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And something that I do if I find
Mhm.
myself stuck is I'll just like kind of bracket the next part of the
Yes.
plot, what should happen, and then I jump
Right.
ahead to the scene that I do have ready to go in my head and
Yeah.
just keep going. Like don't let anything stop you. I think
Yeah.
it's a little bit like art where you start out with like a rough shape and then you start filling in more and more details as you go. If you
Mm-hmm.
watch an artist, they don't start and draw the most detailed little eyeball. They like rough out the shapes and the pose. And
Right.
I
Right.
think
That's a
that
really smart way to
it's
look at
similar
that.
to
Yeah.
writing in that way.
Yeah. No, that's a great analogy. Of the yes, you don't do the fine details when you first start out with a painting or a drawing, and
Hmm.
that's a great way of putting it. I really love that comparison. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a great
Um,
one.
Yeah, we're all
And
writers. Listen to us explain things so well. We're so articulate. I know. I love
I
it.
wish. When I speak, I am not as articulate as I am when I write.
Right, right. Yes, yes. Um, how do you make time for writing?
I I don't. I sacrifice my sleep. I really do. I will stay up until early hours of the morning and write. And then recently I don't have a job, but I wrote my book when I had a job. And so
Mm,
I would stay up late. I would wake up for my job, my normal 9 to 5. And then after work, I give myself about 4 hours to do chores or hang out with friends every night.
mhm,
And then I'd get back to writing by like 11 p.m. and I'd be up. So writing was a full-time job and I sacrificed a lot of my sleep for it, but it
mhm.
was because it's what I wanted to do. And when I wasn't writing, I was thinking about it. So,
Right.
yeah, so the time that I made for writing was a lot of sacrificing, but it was also because I couldn't sleep without doing it. So,
Right. You couldn't sleep until the story was out anyways.
yeah.
I find that a lot of people we ask that question to, their answer is, I don't sleep as much as I should. So you're
Yep.
in good company. Yeah, I think you just have to cut corners somewhere sometimes to make the writing time happen.
Yeah, but it's not a chore if it's something you love. So,
Right, right. Yeah, when it gives you like purpose and that joy in your life, it's well worth it. Exactly.
There's something
Exactly.
about writing a book that is just all consuming. You know, you dream about it, you're thinking about it. You're like, if you're not writing, you're thinking about writing, you're thinking about those plot. Those characters feel as real to you as
Right.
your actual friends. You have conversations with them in your head. You know, you have arguments with them in your head. It's like kind of it's I love that feeling so much, to just be
Right.
immersed so deeply in my own story, to the point where I'm a little bit annoyed when I'm like yanked back into the real world.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Some of the best dialogue and scenes that I've written came from me sitting in my car, like
Mhm.
driving
Right.
somewhere.
Mhm. Yes, yes. No, I like shower thoughts,
Mhm.
Oh,
driving.
yes.
Those are like when your brain's going and but your hands are doing something to keep you occupied. Yeah.
Yep.
Those are the
Yep.
best times to figure out plot. The only thing that is unfortunate is that like if you are driving and you get a great idea and you have to like keep repeating the idea
Yeah.
so you don't forget it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll
Mhm.
grab my phone and I'll use like the Siri notes sometimes if
Oh,
I
okay.
can.
Yeah, yeah,
If
yeah.
I can,
Yes.
otherwise I repeat it until I get to a stoplight so I can write it down really
Mhm.
quick.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah. Um
Hit the little microphone and just say it, and
Yes.
hopefully my phone gets the gist.
Yeah,
right.
right?
Somebody does something in the little phone
Mhm.
operating system. Yeah. What would you say influences your writing?
I honestly say my own life influences a lot of my writing. I I say this in the most non non-vain way I can. My
Mhm.
life is very interesting. It's very chaotic.
Right.
There's always something, or there's some emotion, obviously emotional attachment I have to the events in my life, and um, a lot of times I'll relive those events in my head, and I want to expel them in some way. And I found writing to be like my shelter. Or honestly, a big one is I have very vivid dreams when I sleep,
Mhm.
and to relive the good dreams or the really intense dreams, I'll write and I'll incorporate that into my writing and into my stories. So honestly, what inspires me is myself.
Yeah, no. My sister gets a lot of inspiration from her dreams as well. So, I mean, dreams can be fascinating, right? And they come with their own story plot. They often come with like emotions attached, things
Mhm.
you feel in your dreams, so they can be very inspiring.
Yeah. Yeah, my dreams tend to be very intense, and like I'll wake
Mm-hmm.
up with like an emotion stuck to me all day long because of a dream,
Right,
you
right.
know? And like that event didn't even happen, but then I'm stuck feeling that emotion that I felt in my dream.
Yeah,
And I feel like there's no way to expel it because I can't relive the dream. I never
right.
lived it to begin with. And so I'm the only other place that I can go
Hmm.
with such an intense emotion to relive it is writing. You know, I can make a whole story, a whole
Yeah,
world out of what this intense emotion is. So that's a lot of
yeah.
what it inspires my writings.
And writing can be so cathartic too, like just
Yes.
Yes.
getting the feelings out, getting the thoughts out of your head,
Yeah.
and giving it a place to live.
Mhm.
That's
It's
not in
definitely
your
its
brain.
own
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's definitely its own kind of therapy.
yeah,
Yes. Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
Yes, no, I love it, especially when you have somebody who's like bright, bubbly, sparkly personality, and then they write like the darkest things because they have to get it out of them to be bright,
Yes.
bubbly, sparkly. But it's so funny. I saw a meme on Facebook today that was just like Wednesday Adams from the TV show and her roommate, and her roommate's the writer, and the Wednesday Adams like what they write, the writing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
but I find it's like so true because like yeah, I can write about some dark stuff in my horror, but like it's better out than in. you know.
Yes, right? It's better out there instead of in here.
Yes, yes, 100%.
Yeah.
So, what would you say has been your most significant writing victory so far?
Definitely Memories of Yesterday.
Hmm.
It's my debut novel, and it's like the only thing I have published so far. And I honestly I sit here to this day and I wish that I could relive the experience of writing it again. I wish that
Yeah.
I could just start it from scratch and be back in 2022 when I started that journey. And I wish I could read it for the first time again because
Hmm.
I love it. And I've read this book so much just on my own, because I love what I created. And like, it is loosely based off of me and that first love story. So obviously it has a lot of emotions tied to it.
Right.
But I also just think that the way that I wrote it, I was so impressed with how I'd grown as a writer and how that showed. And I was impressed with my own voice that I had when I wrote it. So that definitely is my greatest accomplishment. And it will, no matter how great of a writer I get, that I'm sure I'll surpass far from what I
Right.
am now. I think that will always be my favorite accomplishment. Because, I mean, also, I made it as an author to publish this book. So it put me on the map in a small way, but it put me on the map. You know, it made me from a writer to an author. And that was also a huge accomplishment too. So
100%, that's a huge accomplishment. What they say, like the only 1% or 3% of people who want to write in the U.S. actually publish a novel. So you're the elite of the elite, making that accomplishment happen, making that dream come true. It's always going to have a special place for you, and you can be so proud of having found your voice in your first book, because I feel like voices and writing style is something that's so elusive for people.
Yes.
Like when it comes to like figuring out your voice, figuring out your writing style, it can be one of the hardest challenges as a writer you do. So like, you loving your writing voice and your style in your first book, that's amazing. Yeah.
And also it's the first novel that I like actually finished. I've started and I've gotten to like the middle of so many stories.
Yes.
But this is the first one that I wrote the ending to. And that's, of course, that's also huge because it takes a lot to actually write a story front and back. Like that is the hardest part of writing is writing. So it definitely made me feel like I could accomplish more. And
yes,
for sure. And there's so much that you learn from finishing. Like I encourage people to just, even if it's short stories, just practicing finishing and learning what it's like to finish a story teaches you so much as a writer.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, because I had the same problem. I wrote like 6 or 7 novels before I graduated from college, but I could never finish them. And so it was like I really like looked at my writing process and was like, we have to try something new, because this whole, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results, is not working. That's why I love talking about writing processes with people, because there's so many different ways to get this done. And there's so many different ways to like write a story. But you have to try different things to figure out what works for you so that you can be most successful.
Absolutely. Yeah. I have so many unfinished drafts and like honestly in different emails. Like I have them in so many different emails.
Yeah.
But like I would write on Wattpad or I'd write on like obviously like Word and whatnot. And I've never finished any of them. So that's another reason that it's just such a huge accomplishment. Because when I started it, I didn't expect to finish this. I expected to like get halfway through and give up in a few days, like I had done in the past. And so the fact that I stuck with it and I wrote for months on end every single night was mind-blowing, and it was amazing when it was.
It showed you what you were capable of and that you do have this in you. I love that.
Yeah.
It's interesting when you come from being a hobby writer, because you've been writing since you were 5, and you've written probably hundreds of stories, but there's a moment when you stop and you go like, wait, there's something here, like this is good, this is good enough to move forward with, like you have a clear plan for it, it clicks into place, and you finish that book and it's just like like
absolutely.
that moment. And then you have to go through the really humbling process of getting it edited, fixing all that is wrong with it,
getting all the comments back.
It is very humbling.
It takes so much bravery to actually hit publish.
I didn't think that I would. I wrote this story and I wrote it for me, and the whole process, I was debating if at first I started and I was like, I'm not going to publish it. It's for me. It's mine alone. But once I'm done with this and the next story, I'll publish that. But as I got to finishing this story, I was like, you know what? I'm going to publish it. Like this is,
Yeah.
I don't know how many people will read this, but the story, I wrote it for me. I'm happy with this story. And
Mhm.
if 5 people read it, that's great. That's amazing.
Right.
But the story
Right.
is for me. And I decided
Yeah.
finally to send it to an editor, and to get it published.
Mhm.
And that was huge. I didn't think I'd do it, and I did it. And I do not regret that at all.
Yeah, kudos to you for doing the scary thing. Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, I love
Yes, you have to break a piece of yourself off,
that. Mhm. Right.
Yeah.
Put that out into the world for just anyone to read.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Um, you've, I don't know if you're like me, but people are like, "Oh, you like to write," and you're actually like a little bit afraid to
Yes.
And
mention
tell
that
them
you
the
even wrote a
truth.
book
Yeah.
because what if they read it?
Yes.
And have
Some of my,
feelings about it. Yeah.
yeah.
Yes.
Some of my friends, I mean, most of my friends have bought my book, and I'm like, you don't have to read it, because a lot of them are guys, and mine is a
Right.
romance, and
Right.
I'm like, you don't have to read it. Buying it was like enough to support me.
Right.
You
Yes.
do not have to read
Just
the
put
romance.
it on your shelf. It'll look great.
Yeah, I'll sign it
Yes.
for you.
Don't
You
know
don't have to touch it.
Yes. No, I know exactly what you mean. And yeah, sometimes people ask me like, "Oh, what's the name of the book you write?" And I'm like, "Can I tell you later?" And then conveniently forget to ever tell them because I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't know that I want people who know me to read my book because then they might want to tell me their feelings on it, and I'm like, I'm not ready for that conversation.
Yeah, right?
Right. It's like the
Yes.
other conundrum about writing is that like we love writing but we hate writing. But the other conundrum is like I want everyone to read my book, but I want no one to read my book at the same time. Like
Yes.
Yeah, you want all the reviews, but at the same time, you don't want any reviews.
yes, yes, yes. I want you to read my book only if you love it.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Only if you're gonna love it. Otherwise, just leave it be.
Exactly.
Yes.
Oh goodness, yeah.
That's one
Yeah.
reason why I chose a pen name is just like
Right.
that 1 degree of separation
Yeah.
from like who I
Yeah.
am in my real life versus like my author life, you know.
Right. Right.
Um,
Yeah.
but even under the guise of a pen name, like it still takes
Right.
a lot of courage because people are gonna
Exactly.
find out. Like,
Yeah, and
Right.
it's hard not to promote yourself
Mhm.
without giving away at least a little bit of who you
Who
are
you're
behind the.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, even my name is a pen name. It's not far off from my real name,
Right.
but
Right.
it
Oh,
I have it as a pen name, and at first I was gonna go all out with a pen name and just completely pick a random name. But I
Mm-hmm.
decided to kind of keep it close to home. So
Yeah.
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 Rynn Ely is very pretty.
thank
I
you.
love that name. Mm-hmm.
All right. So what are you reading now?
Right now, I am in a book hangover from my last book, which was The Girl Who Was Taken, and that one was amazing. I loved it. I'm about to start 20 Years Later from the same author. I think Charlie Denoa or something like that. I'm really bad at author names sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
especially if they're new authors to me. But I have started about 2 chapters of 20 Years Later, and I'm slowly picking that one up right now.
All right.
Yeah.
Donley.
Oh,
Charlie.
okay.
Oh, yeah, Charlie Donley, I think is
Okay.
his
Yeah.
name. Yeah.
Thank you.
Let me fact check real quick because I'm like, we love getting recommendations for new books. So I wanted to make sure
Yes.
the author knew.
I loved
Right.
it because he
Mhm.
wrote The Girl Who Was Taken. And then I guess I am
Yeah.
buddy reading Local Woman Missing. And
Okay.
that one my friend is not as fast of a reader as I am. So I'm waiting for her to keep up with catch up to where I'm at.
Yeah.
And I'm at this part where my mind is blown. And I have
Yeah.
to wait for her to get there so I can
So you
figure
can
out what
react.
happens
Yeah.
next. Yeah.
Hurry up, friend. Yes. No.
Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
I love
I
those text messages you get though. We're like, it's just their text message just screaming. It's just
Yeah.
screaming. You're like, oh, you got to the part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Text
Right.
me
You
when you get to
caught
the
up.
part. And they're like, what do you mean? You're like, you'll know. You'll know
Yeah,
the part.
right? Or
Yeah.
she'll text me where I haven't gotten there yet. And she's like, have you gotten to the end? Oh my God. And I'm like,
Right.
what? She's like, well, get to the end. And all you get
Yeah.
is just OMG. So,
Yeah, no, I love that too, that like you have somebody that you're buddy reading with because like when you have those big reactions and like responses to the writing, like the first thing I want to do is talk to somebody about it who's like been through the same trauma of the book, right? Like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, can you believe that part? It's so fun talking about stories with people though. Like, it's
Yeah,
such a
absolutely.
human drive too of being
Yeah.
like, I saw this show. Did you see it yet? Because I want to talk about it
Yeah.
or read a book. Yeah.
I'm doing that right now with shows. I love like buddy reading or buddy watching where we're like
Yeah.
watch or read to hear by this date and then
Right.
we'll talk about it. And I
I
love
love
doing
that.
that with my friends and because it's just so fun. I love getting the live reactions and giving them
Mm-hmm.
oh my god, this she's crazy or like
Right.
all those
Right.
fun expressions
It
and
was him the whole time. Yeah.
yeah, I love those so much.
Yeah.
It's my favorite part of buddy reading, and I love doing.
Mhm.
I have multiple buddy readers lately, so
Yeah, no, I love that too because it's just like, it's the human nature to love stories, but like we also love talking about the stories and
yeah,
like seeing how other people react to them too.
yeah.
Good on you for finding time to read.
Yes.
It was
Yes.
hard. I didn't do a whole lot when I was writing my first book. There wasn't a lot
Mhm.
of reading because I had work for 8 hours, writing
Right.
for 8 hours, and
Right.
then like sleep and hanging out with people for like 4 hours
Yeah.
each. So
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
was hard to read back then, but I've found more of a balance more like lately on
Yeah,
how I'm
that's
getting
great.
everything done. So,
That's really awesome. Yeah. Finding a balance is so hard in life. I feel like, we talk about adulting all the time, but it's just like, yeah, you're just trying to find time here and there to do what you need and do what you like and makes you happy still.
yeah.
Mhm.
Do you have any writing advice that you hate? Either you think it's like not great advice or it just shouldn't be applied to everyone.
When people tell people how to structure their writing is one of the things that I dislike. Telling people, I understand obviously editors do it, and that's
Mhm.
fine because they're an editor, but other authors telling authors how like a strict regimen of how they should structure their writing is
Mhm.
not always what I love to hear because I everyone writes differently and
Right.
every voice is different. And
Yeah.
just because one author's voice isn't similar to how I write does not make their writing wrong. And I see a
Right.
lot in like the groups that I'm in of someone posts their work or like a section of their work for advice from the other authors in the group and
Mhm.
they just nail them for like the small things like make like the stuff that an editor should do but also further than that of just saying like I would just completely restructure how you wrote this. I think that having your own voice as an author is so important
Yeah.
and I think that appreciating other voices other than your own is also important and I can't say that in the beginning I didn't fall a victim to this as well because
Right.
I would sit there and my writing is more I have a very like poetic flow
Mhm.
of my writing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I paint like a very detailed scene and so telling telling me that I need to simplify it or me telling other
Mhm.
authors that they need to advance their writing and that's just not the
Right.
case because you see like really important like really not important very popular stories
Yeah.
also having like simple writing and that's nothing bad and it still gets the point across it's still great storytelling people
Mhm.
still love it no one focuses very deeply no reader and like reader alone when they read and when I read I don't focus on sentence to sentence how it
Mhm.
it fits perfectly and flows perfectly. I read it as a whole of like how is that plot looking? How are they
Mhm.
portraying the scene?
Right.
And I think that yes, readers I'm sure a lot of readers do focus on sentence structure, but I think that we think a little too hard on sentence structure as
Mhm.
authors.
Mhm.
I agree because well, I agree with what you're saying about the advice because like we should never be giving critiques of other people's writing. It should never be like I would do it this way, right? That
Mhm.
should never be the critique.
You also need to pay attention to who you're taking advice from,
Yes.
and do they write in the same genre that you do?
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
like fantasy tends to be a longer word count. There's a whole lot of more world building. Whereas, like with most thrillers, you don't have to world build beyond the main character's
Yeah.
social circle most of the
Right.
time.
Yeah.
Right.
So you're going to get a different focus. You're going to get a different thing. And I love to read a variety of all kinds of different books.
Mhm.
And sometimes I really appreciate just an easy read book. It's
Right.
simple, it flows, it's easy to see. It's not, it's,
You don't
Yeah.
have to dissect it. Yeah.
it's fluffy and
Mhm.
it's easy and it's fun. It's just
Yeah.
fun. And then at the same time, I'll also appreciate one of those like I think of them as like brown thick bread. Like you have to
Mm.
really
Chew
pick it
it.
apart, and like it has that elevated vocabulary, and you have to look a few words up, and it's just
Mhm.
thick. You can
Mhm.
understand those, but they take effort. They take a
Yeah.
lot more effort,
Right. Right. I
and
was gonna.
yeah.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
okay, it's
Sorry.
okay.
Yeah.
So like and those thicker books, you have to stop and like close the book and like think it over a little bit and like
Right.
they cause you to think. I love everything. I love all of those. But even with the same writer, you'll get different moods and you can't go to
Mhm.
the simple
Mhm.
author and be like, no, you need to up your game and like we don't want to all be the same.
Yeah.
We love
No.
variety.
No. Yeah.
Everybody loves variety.
And everyone likes different things too. So just because
Mhm.
somebody doesn't like what you're writing, someone else is gonna love that aspect of your writing even more because of that. They're like beauty. There's like so many different things that are beautiful, but they're so different, right? Like Christmas lights are beautiful, stars are beautiful, flowers are beautiful, balloons are beautiful. They're all different though, and like the same can be said with the classics or different writing styles. Like if you take
Yes.
Anne Montgomery versus Hemingway,
Yeah.
very, very different writing. They're still both great books and they're still both great writing styles. They're just different, and it's okay that they're different because somebody like you like your writing style that is more complex, more sophisticated, maybe than something super simplistic to read. Somebody's gonna love that, right? Because we all
Yes.
have
Yeah.
different tastes. You can be beautiful in different ways. You can be beautiful writing in different ways too.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah, well, we want to give you an opportunity to let our audience know where they can find out more about you and your books online. So now's the time to share your socials and website if you have one.
Yeah, so I am it's a complex username. It is ELYSIXN and then a period and then EPUB. So EPUB.
Mhm.
That is my Instagram username. I post about like quick reviews of the books I read, a little bit of my private life here and there, and a lot of my own like the book that I wrote. I
Mhm.
use that as my main author social media there. And then my I have a website which is Rynn Ely, so my name .com, and that's where you can find out a lot more of my like where you can find my book, which is obviously if you look up Memories of Yesterday by Rynn Ely on Amazon or on
Mhm.
Google, you can find it there. It'll pop up with a lot of different places, and it's also on my website. And then I blog a little bit on my website here and there. And then on there, you can also sign up for my newsletters. And that's really where I kind of divulge what's happening,
Mhm.
where I'm at in my writing process, any updates. That's the newsletter is definitely going to be a huge one. The newsletter and my Instagram are going to be the two main ones that I really
Right.
use a lot. So, yeah.
Yes. It's been wonderful having this conversation with you and having you on the show. So we want to say thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me. It's been so fun to meet you guys.
Yes, it's been a wonderful conversation too. And thank you to everyone who's listening along at home. Remember, there's more than one way up a mountain, and our next episode airs Friday as usual. If you're interested in being a guest on the show, you can find us on social media at The Tell Not Show or email us at thetellnotshow@gmail.com. Thanks again for listening.
Thanks again for listening. If you enjoyed the show, consider subscribing and liking. We appreciate all the support. Julia J.K. Allen is an author, editor, and coach and can be found at hijinksrudder.com.
Kirsha Fox is an author, avid reader, gamer, and mother to four, and you can find her at kirshafox.com. Thanks and see you next time.